Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of GeoStrata Extra, the show that gets you behind the article with an author from, or authors from our current issue. My name is Brad Keeler. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and we are thrilled to have you along for the ride today on another exciting episode of GeoStrata Extra. If you haven't read the current issue of the magazine, after you watch this today, head over to readgeo.com, or if you get a paper copy in your mailbox, walk over to wherever you store that and open it up and take a look. The theme of the current issue, the August-September issue, is environmental geotechnics. So, few things about us. If you're not familiar with the Geo-Institute, again, after you watch this today, head over to geo-institute.org, and there you will find out all kinds of important things about us, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Of course, if you like what you see today, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, maybe even in that order. And we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. We're very fortunate to have a sponsor for today's episode, and it is GeoPeer, a CMC company. We have a brief message from them, and then we will be right back. Thanks again to GeoPeer, our sponsor for this episode of GeoStrata Extra. Of course, if you have been watching our live streams this summer, you know that this is part of the Geo-Institute Summer of Live. Head over to our Eventbrite page and see all the great live streams that we have coming up. We'll tell you a little bit more about those at the end. But now, GeoStrata Extra. This month's article that we're featuring is by Krishna, Reddy, and Gaurav Verma from the University of Illinois at Chicago. It's on environmental justice, an amazing topic that we're going to talk about this afternoon. Here to tell you a little bit more about it and them and other stuff from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. It's Brian Hubel. Brian, thank you for hosting today. Take it away.
All right. Good afternoon or morning, wherever you might be. My name's Brian Hubel. I'm a geotechnical engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers out here in the California. I'm part of the South Pacific Division Dam Safety Production Center. So glad to be here. I've been an editor on the GeoStrata editorial board since about 2010. So as Brad mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the August-September 2024 issue of GeoStrata. It has a theme of environmental geotechnics. Many of us, at least myself, are familiar with kind of environmental aspects of civil engineering and geotechnical engineering projects, like things like endangered species that we have to protect, or water quality management, and soil contamination cleanup. But one topic that is perhaps less familiar to many of us is environmental justice and how we incorporate that in our work. So today, I'll be speaking with Dr. Krishna Reddy and his graduate student, Gaurav Verma, who co-authored this issue's article titled Unlocking Environmental Justice for Contaminated Site Cleanups. The article talks about new tools such as the EPA's EJScreen and how they can be used to incorporate environmental justice in project decisions. So that's what we're going to be talking about. It's a very interesting topic. I'm going to briefly introduce Dr. Reddy. He's a university scholar, distinguished researcher, and professor in the Department of Civil Materials and Environmental Engineering at the University of Illinois in Chicago. He's also the director of the Sustainable Engineering Research and Geotechnical and Geo-Environmental Laboratories. He received his PhD in civil engineering from the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. And before joining UIC, he worked for several years in consulting as a geotechnical geo-environmental engineer. His research includes environmental remediation, waste, beneficial use of waste and recycled materials, and sustainable and resilient engineering. Dr. Reddy has authored 4 major books, including the well-known textbook Geo-Environmental Engineering and Sustainable Engineering. Both of those books are published by Wiley. He's authored more than 300 papers, edited books and conference proceedings, and is, I'm sure, as everyone knows, well known throughout our profession. So we're happy to have him to talk with us today. So his graduate student, Gaurav Verma, is a PhD candidate in the Department of Civil Materials and Environmental Engineering at the university. His research interests include waste management, landfills, contaminated site remediation, and sustainability. So just as we dive into our discussion and the article, if anyone has questions for the authors, I encourage you to type them into the comments window, and we'll try to get them as best we can if time is during. So welcome, Dr. Reddy and Verma Gaurav, and welcome to the interviews. I'll just jump right in with our first question. So for anyone who hasn't received their issue or hasn't had a chance to read it yet, would you give us a little background on the term environmental justice and why it's important to the broad discipline of civil engineering?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Well, first of all, I want to thank Brad and Geo-Institute for arranging this GEOSTRATA Extra. And I want to thank everyone for joining. First of all, I want to thank GeoStrata editorial board for creating an excellent August-September issue on environmental geotechniques. I have a copy of it here. And all the articles are excellent here. I highly recommend everyone to read it. I'm especially thankful to Jim Vithium and also Brian, you for editing our article and making it excellent. And of course, you know, this is a very unconventional topic, and thank you for supporting this topic. Coming to your question, Brian, regarding environmental justice and civil engineering. As you know, ASCE has a roadmap to sustainable development. So it basically asks civil engineers to do 2 things. First thing is do the right project. Basically, you know, you need to look at all the alternatives before projects or any programs are conceived or executed or operated. So just right in the beginning, look at what are all the alternatives. Don't jump into one alternative and keep going. You need to look at all the alternatives. These days, you know, nature-based solutions are becoming many preferable options. And the second thing that ASCE recommends is once you select the project and doing it right. In doing it right, ASCE recommends addressing sustainability and resiliency. Both are very important. Everybody knows about sustainability and triple bottom line of sustainability, environmental, economics, and social aspects. Environmental and economic aspects are somewhat well known. You know, people do a lot of work on that one, but on the social aspects is the tough one. A lot of people don't understand it. Even ASCE has a policy. It's called, I think, 417, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Basically, you know, it requires the projects to address the unique needs of diverse demographic, social, economic, and cultural groups in their project planning and design. the terms that are not familiar to civil engineers are justice and equity. I can go on explaining these things for a long time, but in a nutshell, justice is ensuring resources and opportunities to all individuals and communities so that they can live a full and dignified life. That's the justice. On the other hand, equity is ensuring fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all the people. So this basically requires understanding of historical and systematic patterns of disparity among the people and among the communities, and devising the strategies to achieve equitable outcomes and so-called social justice. So civil engineers, I mean, as I said, ASCE has a code of ethics that emphasizes the importance of social justice in the practice of civil engineering. And essentially, it is asking us to consider diverse historical, social, and cultural needs of the community and balance societal, environmental, and economic impacts. So when you talk about environmental impacts, Brian, I deal with contaminated sites, and you could think about many other civil engineering projects. The environmental and health burdens are not equally shared. Especially, I deal with a lot of contaminated sites, and the effects of contamination is more on a certain population. So that's where this term environmental justice comes into play. So environmental justice means the just treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of income, race, color, national origin, tribal affiliation, disability. So that should not affect the human health and the environment. So that's kind of a gist of what environmental justice is. So
thank you.
A lot of disadvantaged communities have more impacts of these environmental impacts. And the disadvantaged communities are the ones which have a low income, they are minority populations, and they have a lot of health issues, and they don't have access to education, healthcare. They are neglected by private and public agencies. And as I said, they don't have a political power. So, they continue to get impacted by these environmental impacts. So the environmental justice is a big issue. So what happened is, I mean, this has been recognized as an issue for a long time, but this became an extremely important issue when President Bill Clinton in 1994 signed an executive order. And in that, he emphasized that all the federal agencies should consider environmental justice. And then recently, President Joe Biden has signed another executive order that also required on all the federal projects to consider environmental justice. So environmental justice has become a very important issue to be considered on all the projects, going forward. So that's how it got a lot of importance, in civil engineering, and as a matter of fact, for all engineering projects. Sorry, I took a longer time, but I just wanted to.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's good for. I think it's good for our listeners to have a good background on that. No, that's very good. So, I guess as we're beginning to implement this more, it's a challenge to evaluate environmental justice, especially for engineers that might be kind of focused on very mechanical or technical details of their work. Your article highlights the EPA EJScreen tool that is used to help evaluate environmental vulnerability and challenges of various communities. Probably most of us have never used it. Would you talk us through it? And I understand you have a video to show us on how that works.
Yeah, so everybody wants to address this environmental justice, but how do you do that, right? So US EPA developed this tool called EJScreen. This is the blessing to all the professionals to address environmental justice. It is a free online tool available on US EPA website. So the tool is basically, it's a GIS system, and it's combined with different data sets. A lot of different types of data sets. I will go over those one, very briefly. But main important data sets are environmental indicators and socioeconomic indicators. When you talk about, environmental justice, these two types of indicators are important. So you can overlay these indicators on the GIS map. So basically, you select a location, basically your project location, anywhere in the U.S. And then this tool can display, what are the environmental issues and what are the socioeconomic aspects, applicable for that particular area at a very fine scale. It's a block group scale, which is not possible with a lot of other tools. So which is kind of very nice. If you want to know, issues in your neighborhood, you just put that location and then it can give you all this information. So it gives you nice maps, charts. Anybody can easily understand these things. So one thing that EPA, what they did is they looked at these environmental indicators and social economic indicators. They try to come up with a formula to calculate environmental justice indexes. And then those environmental justice indexes are used to conclude or to say if there are any environmental justice issues or not. So I will go over that one, after seeing this video. I think viewers will have a good idea about what I'm talking about, because if they don't see it, they think it's too complicated, and but if they see this video, they can understand how easy it is to use it. And it is not only useful for environmental remediation of contaminated sites, but any project, or all civil engineering projects, it can be used. So if the video can be played now, I mean, viewers can have a good idea about what this tool is all about.
Welcome to the EJScreen in 5 video.
On,
a quick overview of the EJScreen tool in about 5 minutes. EJScreen is a tool created by the EPA to map and screen for environmental justice issues in communities across the United States. It provides maps and data that show environmental information such as air quality, water pollution, and possible health burdens, while at the same time looking at the socioeconomic conditions of the people there. By combining environmental and socioeconomic data, EJScreen highlights areas where vulnerable populations may be disproportionately impacted by pollution. The EPA uses EJScreen as a starting point for considering environmental justice across its many programs and policies. And you can use it too. You can use EJScreen to see if there are disproportionate levels of pollution or other environmental issues near where you live, work, worship, or play. So let's dive in and explore together. Once you open the tool, you can navigate around the map by clicking the plus and minus buttons on the bottom right corner to zoom in or out, or by using the scroll wheel on your mouse. You can move side to side or up and down by clicking and dragging on the map with your mouse, or by using the arrow keys on your keyboard. If you have a destination or a place of interest in mind, you can also type in the address, zip code, city, or coordinates into the box in the top right corner. So let's say you're interested in Houston, Texas. You can type in the city name here, select it in the drop-down box, and EJScreen brings you to the location and drops a pin on the city center. In the bottom left corner, you can also toggle between the default street space map and the satellite imagery. The table of contents on the left side of the screen is where you can access the various map layers and functions in the tool. The table of contents is split into 4 tabs: the Maps tab, the Places tab, the Reports tab, and lastly, the Tools tab. The first tab, the Maps tab, includes several different types of map layers that you can open onto the existing base map. Clicking on the Environmental Burden Indicators banner reveals all the different environmental indicators that you can select from. EJScreen provides data for 13 environmental burden indicators, which look at things like air quality, or proximity to various pollution sources. These indicators map out a wide range of environmental conditions that could potentially affect communities. You can select one of them, like hazardous waste proximity, and the layer will appear on the screen along with a map contents panel that provides more information on and a visual key to whatever layers are currently being shown. Farther down on the Maps tab, there are the socioeconomic indicators. The first two options on this list are indexes, which include multiple socioeconomic indicators in their calculations. The first is the demographic index, which includes two factors, low income and people of color. The second is the supplemental demographic index, which includes 5 factors, low income, persons with disabilities, less than high school education, limited English speaking, and low life expectancy. Looking at these individually or together in the indexes can help you learn a lot about the socioeconomic issues that a community might already be dealing with, and also how susceptible a community might be to the environmental burdens. Next are the environmental justice indexes and supplemental indexes. These combine each of the 13 environmental burden indicators with either the demographic index or the supplemental demographic index that we mentioned before. The intention of these indexes is to show where both environmental and socioeconomic conditions are disproportionately high and intersect each other. There are also map layers that look at health disparities, climate-related burdens, and critical service gaps. The next tab is the Places tab, which holds a wide variety of map layers that may be of interest when considering environmental justice issues. This includes layers for facilities which the EPA regulates, and also community landmarks such as schools, places of worship, or hospitals. The next tab is the Reports tab, and this is where you can select an area and create an EJScreen community report, which can be printed as a PDF and saved or shared with others. This report summarizes all the indicators and other data available in EJScreen for all persons living within the area that you selected. And that's it for our EJScreen in 5 quick overview video. More details on how to use the different functions of the tool can be found in the EJScreen user guide, which can be accessed through the link below this video or through the help link in the top right corner of the home screen. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the EJScreen in 5 video.
Tool. So it has, as I said, it's a GIS system. It has all these data sets included in it. So as you saw, there are different types of environmental burden indicators data sets, and then you have a socio-economic indicator data set, like people of color, low income, unemployment rate, so forth. And then it also has a lot of other data sets that are not currently used in environmental justice assessments, but they could be really, really useful, if you are dealing with some other projects, if those indicators are important. For example, health disparity indicators, cancer. What is the cancer rate in a particular area? You can find out that one. Heart diseases, low life expectancy. So those indicators are built in. And then other important thing, I know a lot of people work on climate change these days. So the climate change indicators, the flood risk, wildfire risk, 100-year floodplains, sea level rise, extreme heat. If you want to see what are the potential climate change issues in a particular area, you can go to that, use the tool and pick the location and pick the indicator, and it will show you, if it is a problem or not problem. And the other important thing is, from a social point of view, is critical service gaps. Do they have internet, or there's lack of health insurance, housing burden, transportation access, so forth. You have those indicators also built in. And there are a lot of other environmental data built in, and also community landmarks. You know, if you want to see the schools, hospitals, places of worship, parks, and all those things, those kind of data set is also included. And one thing I really like in the latest version is version 2.3 is Justice 40. There's according to presidential executive order, there's a Justice 40 initiative. For that, to qualify, there is a certain criteria to be met to designate a community as a disadvantaged community. So this one takes all that criteria into account and says, this area meets this Justice 40 criteria or not. That's very important. We can talk about that later as the time permits. But it's a very powerful tool. If you want to overlay different indicators, that can also be done as a threshold map. And one thing I want to mention, this tool can be used anywhere in the U.S. For any location in the geographic location in the U.S. And the finest scale that you can go is the block group or block level. I mean, almost close to your neighborhood. If you are interested looking at all these indicators in your neighborhood, you could do that one. One thing I want to mention is these all data sets are there. Only computing that is done in this this tool is, there are two things. One is it's called the demographic index, and it calculates the supplemental demographic index. So demographic index is basically average of percentage low income, percentage people of color. So that's called demographic index. And then supplemental demographic index is the other socioeconomic indicators like percentage low income, unemployed. So there are under 5 social economic indicators. Average of that one is called supplemental demographic index. So this tool calculates those demographic index and supplementary demographic index. Then after calculating this one, what it does is it multiplies this demographic index with the environmental indicator. And then you get environmental justice index. So you have 13 environmental indicators. So 13 times your demographic index, it gives you 13 environmental justice indicators. And similarly, you have a supplemental demographic index. So it could be a little bit confusing, but don't worry. That's, in terms of the computation, that's the only thing it is doing, this tool. Basically calculating the average of percentage income, percentage people of color, and that's called demographic index. And that demographic index is multiplied by each of those environmental indicators to get environmental justice indicators. And this tool uses environmental justice indicators as indexes as the indicative of EJ concerns. So it's as you saw, it's very easy to use. And one thing that I want to mention is that all the databases that have been used, all the raw data, you can always download it. So everything is transparent. And also this tool is updated annually because demographics change annually, all the indicators change annually. So which is kind of a very nice. EPA is putting in a lot of resources and making this tool updated every year, which is very nice. So I recommend everyone to go to US EPA website and type EJScreen, or in Google you can type EJScreen, and then you will get this tool and you can play around with it, and you will see that it's an extremely powerful tool to use it. Brian?
Very good. Well, thank you. I'm gonna check my own neighborhood after and just see how it works. So yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for the explanation. I think that's very good. The article in the GeoStrata, you guys talk about how 2 past site remediation projects, the People's Gas at Division Street in Chicago and the Exide Battery Recycling Plant in Vernon, California, they did not have environmental justice evaluation before those projects were conducted, but you evaluated them to see how an evaluation might have been used for those projects. Can you talk about how, if you had how if EJScreen or other environmental justice evaluation tools have been used in those projects, it might have affected how those projects were done.
Yeah.
Gaurav, maybe you want.
Yeah, just that's what I teach sustainable engineering course and also remediation engineering course. So I try to teach my students, all these different tools. So, with my graduate student, Gaurav, we did a project to look at environmental justice issues at these two sites. And Gaurav is the one who crunched all the numbers. So Gaurav, can you explain these two case studies?
Sure, Professor Reddy. First of all, before going into the discussion regarding the application of EJScreen on these two case studies, I want to thanks for having me here and providing me an opportunity to discuss the application of EJScreen on these two case studies. So the first case study, which is ASCE battery recycling facility, which is located in the city of Vernon in California. And this facility has been operated on this site for almost 15 years. And as a part of this operation activity, they have been generating a lot of pollutions and contaminating the nearby soil and the groundwater. So because contamination was there, and based on the investigations, what we found out, it was observed that trichloroethylene and the lead in the soil samples were higher in concentration. So following the shutdown of this facility, ASCE decontaminated and deconstructed the building facility, and DTSC, that is California Department Toxic Substances Control, performed the cleanup at the nearby areas, which includes schools, parks, and daycares. Still, the cleanup at the residential properties is still ongoing. So what we did, we performed the EJScreen analysis on this site using a buffer area of 2-mile radius. And what we observed, we got mostly information regarding the community information there in that area within 2-mile radius, as well as the EJ indexes. So if I see the community information, so what we obtained was that 50% low income population and 99% people of color was living in that area. And if we see the EJ indexes, then EJ indexes for each of the environmental indicators was found to be higher than the initial threshold value set by US EPA. So US EPA has defined the initial threshold value that is 80th percentile. So if any of the EJ indexes for any of the environmental indicator crosses that value or exceed that value, then this means that the site raises concern in terms of environmental justice issues. And if in the similar way, if I talk about the second case study, which is People's Gas at Division Street in Chicago. So this site is a former water gas production site, and this was shut down in 1962. And following that, the contaminants, based on the investigation, the contaminants detected were the polyaromatic hydrocarbons and the heavy metals that were found to be there in nearby the area, which contaminated the soil, groundwater, and the sediments. So as a part of the cleanup process, what was done was the 164,000 tons of the soil was excavated and replaced with a clean backfill material. And if we see the contaminated water, then 1 million gallon of the water was removed. Following that remediation process, People's Gas voluntarily performed additional excavation of the soil material at the contaminated site, which includes excavation of 33,000 tons of contaminated soil and again replaced with a clean backfill material in order to set up their new business facility at the site. So this was all over the background of People's Gas. And if we see the EJScreen analysis results, what we got after performing the EJScreen analysis using a buffer area of 1 mile radius from that site, so we got community information as well as the EJ indexes. And the community information we see, then the people of color was almost 34% and 15% were the low income population, which is lower as comparison to what we see in the previous case study, that is ASCE battery recycling facility. So, and if we see the EJ indexes result, so the EJ indexes for all the environmental indicators were found to be lower than the initial threshold value set by US EPA, which is like in contrast what we observed in the Exide battery recycling facility. So based on the discussion of these two case studies, what we can conclude is that EJScreen can be utilized to get the demographic information of a particular area, can also use to identify if there is any environmental justice issues in that area, potential environmental justice issue in that area or not. That's all about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess so. In looking at that, do you think that if the EJScreen tool had been used early on, maybe for the battery recycling plant, that would have gotten more attention to clean it up, or that because it seems like I think you mentioned that took a long time, and the other one was kind of voluntarily done at the People's Gas Station, and it seems to be related to there's a lot more money in the area and things like that. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on that or any implications on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brian, I think that's a good observation. So this kind of analysis, these two case studies are very interesting. So in one case study, the California case, there are EJ concerns, right? I mean, EJScreen shows that there are environmental justice concerns because of the demographics there. Whereas, Chicago side, we don't have EJ concerns, but, the way, remediation is being done, so, we observed in other case studies also, even though there are severe EJ concerns, remediation tend to be very slow. That's why, now EPA and a lot of other agencies are putting in a lot of grants, funding to expedite those remediation programs. The one in Chicago case study, you don't have EJ concerns, but the remediation is happening fast because that site is in a prime location, and there's a sale value is very high, so they want to remediate it and sell it. So it is the development and the economic situation that is governing the second site. EJ concerns are not. So that's why we are trying to, as I said, the sites that have a disadvantaged communities around it, they are feeling the effects, and remediation is taking longer time. So that's where the environmental justice comes into picture.
Thank you. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess my next question is, so the tool we're talking about, the screening, was really a screening tool, and when you cross like the threshold, like Gaurav mentioned, it means that maybe you have an environmental justice concern for a particular area. What are the kind of additional studies, and how does that look after you identify if a project might have an environmental justice concern?
Yeah, as we have been saying, this EJ tool is basically screening and mapping tool, right? I mean, it's a screen. It's a starting point. So if you see a location, if your EJ indexes are higher, and you call it, it is a potentially EJ concern site. So then, EJScreen does not define definitively it is a EJScreen concerns. So if the tool shows that it is of a EJ concern, then the next thing, Brian, is to actually go to the site of interest and do further investigation and analysis. You need to do the detailed assessment, really get the ground truth, right? And then also, do the community engagement to talk to people and really get that actual data. So that is very important. So that will confirm if EJ concerns are real and the magnitude of those concerns. And then that will lead to a lot of other things, the mitigation strategies, regulatory measures, and how do you, policy and planning activities, public participation. Many different agencies could be coming together to work on that site. So the series of activities will follow after that. The screening and confirmation at the site.
Very good. All right. Can you talk a little bit about how different regulators like the EPA or different state environmental regulators are incorporating the environmental justice in practice, and how that's kind of looks and how it might look in the future?
I see that EPA is doing a lot of things for this environmental justice. Obviously, when dealing with contaminated sites, EPA plays a major role. They created an Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. So every regional office has an environmental justice coordinator, and EPA has many funding opportunities to address the environmental justice concerns on ground. And the other thing, Brian, as I mentioned, the presidential executive order, it has a requirement of J40, Justice 40. 40% of the project investments should be directed toward disadvantaged communities. That means, let's say if I have a civil engineering project, so you need to have a 40% of that project budget has to benefit the disadvantaged communities. So, so that is basically forcing everyone to think about, okay, I have this project, what are the environmental justice issues associated with this project, and how can I mitigate those issues? So they, a lot of projects are taking these things into account and doing it. If they don't do that one, they're not qualified for project funding. So, which is happening by all the agencies. So there are a lot of grant programs and a lot of funding programs are tied to addressing the environmental issues. So I see, a lot of people are, addressing this issue and trying to mitigate these issues.
Very good. All right. Well, yeah, thank you. I have just a few more questions, and I guess I might mix them up a little bit from what I was planning, but I guess your article has and the discussion right now is mostly focused on kind of contaminated soil sites and remediation of those. How are environmental justice evaluations incorporated in other kinds of projects, and what kind of projects is this good for?
I know my paper is mainly focused on contaminated sites, but environmental justice is being considered by almost all projects, especially federal agencies are doing quite a bit, like a US EPA on environmental cleanups. Department of Transportation is doing a lot of projects related to transportation, how it will affect disadvantaged communities. US Department of Energy is doing a lot of projects. Department of Housing and Urban Development is doing a lot of projects. FEMA is doing a lot of projects, and your agency, Brian, Army Corps of Engineers, is also, considering environmental justice in all their civil projects. For example, if you want to have a dam or levee, they are assessing what would be the negative impacts of disadvantaged communities, or if there are any disadvantaged communities in the project, how you help them out. And a lot of state agencies, on all their projects, it's like the policy. Every project that they deal with, they have to address the environmental justice issues. Not only the state level, even local level. For example, City of Chicago has just passed the environmental justice initiative, and in everything that they look at it, they want to promote all the projects how it is addressing the environmental justice, if there are any environmental justice concerns. So it is taken over by almost all federal agencies, state agencies, and at the local level. Even, you know, probably you can see some initiatives at the local, you know, city level, or even your community municipal level.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. All right. I guess the best time probably is to always kind of do this work early on in a planning part of the project. I guess do you have any insight on how the environmental justice criteria are combined with other or weighed against other project criteria, like project cost goals or things like that, and how that's done?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just a lot of times this environmental justice issues, at least just screening should be done at the initial planning stage, so that you can identify the impacts and adjust your design, engage stakeholders and regulatory agencies. You know, basically, you utilize, I mean, EJ justice is another concern, another aspect of the project you need to consider in addition to all the other things. You know, of course, you are interested in cost, time, schedule, you know, everything else, but EJ issues is another aspect to be considered. So basically, you have to optimize, you know, all those things that you generally do anyway for the project, but this EJ issues is another constraint, and that needs to be considered. A lot of times the people do cost benefit analysis with the EJ considerations, or some multi-criteria addition analysis, if people may use that kind of analysis, but somehow you need to balance all different aspects in your project.
Very good. All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered most of my questions. My chat box here doesn't appear to be working. Brad, you can interject if there's other questions coming in that we can get. I have only a few more.
Yeah, we had two that came in from the audience. First one is how can these indexes be included in decision-making processes? Does this help in prioritizing the sites?
So yeah, it's a screening tool, right? You know, basically the EPA threshold is any of the environmental justice indexes is more than 80 or 85 percentile. I mean, it could be set depending upon the project. Then that means it is environmental justice concern. So you have a lot of different environmental indicators, and some cases, you know, according to the criteria, at least one of them could trigger it as an environmental justice concern. But in some situations, you know, many of them could be triggering it. Unfortunately, this tool does not really combine the indicators. It does not give you like a cumulative indicator. And it does not prioritize. I mean, just a screening tool, and you just have to go to the site and get all the information and look at the severity of the situation, and then you probably have to prioritize the mitigation levels based on that. Okay. So this does not make any decisions. It does not give you any definitive answers. It's just a screening tool. Just says, do you have any concern or not? You know. And so it's purely on the environmental indicators and demographic, socioeconomic indicators. But as I mentioned, you know, this tool has a lot to offer. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will work on it, even EPA will work on it. And how do you integrate other indicators that are not part of the EJ index?
I like having academics on shows like this because you guys can say whatever you want. And that is exciting to me. If you were going to add one thing to EJScreen, what would it be? What would be the next thing that you'd like to see in there?
So in the EJScreen, that what I would like to see is some kind of cumulative impact. See, these environmental concerns, individually looking at is different than combining them together. And so, for example, even combining with the health hazard situation. So right now, it is just individual indicators. If I want to do the next step immediate, that means I would really try to look at, what is the cumulative impact of all these environmental indicators, because some of them are very severe, severe impacts it will have it. Some of them don't that much. The degree of, impact is not the same for all indicators. So it's important to weigh them and then integrate them and kind of look at, the overall, the environmental impact.
Like that. Okay, so here's a more specific one about EJScreen. How frequently is the data updated in EJScreen? And I'm asking because in urban areas where the majority of residents are renters, some of the indicators might be continually changing.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's updated every year. It's annually, especially demographics. So, EPA realizes that, people move and, the demographics change quite a bit. So basically what they use is US Census Bureau American Community Survey. But what they do is they take the average of last 5 years and they keep moving that average every year. So it, truly reflects what's going on, as current as last year or this year.
Okay, and then the final question that we have so far, we might get another one, but final question that we have so far from the audience: should the cleanup be prioritized based on the extent of the population, I guess the number of people in an area, or the type of population? And the examples that the questioner gives are minority or economically disadvantaged being affected.
Yeah, basically this EJScreen does not do any risk assessment. That question falls under, the risk assessment. So you have a contamination, how much is the risk that is posing to the people and to the environment. So you really need to do the site-specific risk assessment, the exposure and quantify the risk. Is a carcinogenic risk or non-carcinogenic risk? There's a standard methodology that you follow, but some of them could have some limitations because some of the methods don't take into account of susceptibility of this minority population to more impacts compared to the general public. So so those aspects have to be taken into account, and then do the risk-based risk assessment, and based on that you look at how bad is that site to the people around that area.
Excellent, and that's what we got from the audience so far. Brian, do you have any more?
No, I just really want to thank both of you for the article and taking the time for this. I think it's an important issue that it's good for. I don't know. It's interesting, and I think it's good for all of us to learn about. So I really appreciate it. I don't know if you have any last closing thoughts, Dr. Krishna or Gaurav. I'll turn it back to you for any closing thoughts, and then we can kind of.
No, I just want to say that we always like what we are doing technically. We are passionate about doing the technical designs and everything else, but I think we need to take a step back and look at what are we doing. How is our technical design contributing to the society, right? As I mentioned, there could be many alternatives, and what are the impacts of those alternatives, socially, economically, and broader environmental point of view. So the sustainability issues have to be considered. So the things that we have been doing may not be the right things to do now in light of importance of sustainability and resiliency. So just let's learn about all these broader issues and see how what we are doing could contribute, and if there is a need for shift in thinking on how we should be, doing our things to solve the problem. So that's what I think. My point is, keep open-minded and try to know these broader issues and reevaluate what you're doing. Maybe there are better way to do things than what you have been doing. So that's kind of a message that I would convey.
So I think I actually have one more. I know the U.S. always likes to think of itself as a leader in everything, right? Even though that's not always the case. Do either of you guys have any examples of somebody, another country or another jurisdiction outside the U.S. who's doing a better job than we are in this area? And are there any lessons we can learn from that?
I think, the Europe is probably doing a lot of different stuff, but not in a very coordinated manner. As I mentioned, this federal, our presidential executive orders and the mandate on federal agencies to address environmental justice, that recently pushed, activities into different gear.
Right.
And I cannot imagine. I mean, I don't know if any country has the tool like EJScreen tool with so much of database. So it's, first of all, you need to have an, database that is consistent and national, right? So you might, and EPA does a great job in vetting out the data. They don't want to put any data that comes in their way. They have to make sure that data is consistent and it is available for the entire country. So they do a lot of screening, and anytime there is a national level consistent data, they're adding on to this one. And I see that this tool is going to be used extensively for many other purposes, many other projects, and not only looking at, I'm just saying environmental justice is one thing, but climate justice, right? Mm-hmm. And what about climate and environmental, the combination? How could these disadvantaged communities are suffering with, environmental issues on the top of it, and their areas are getting flooded more than other areas? This combined effect of climate and air pollution, all kinds of things. It's just mind-boggling. But these kind of tools, it can really, give an idea about the problems, identify the sites where extra resources are needed. I think, we really need to make this, disadvantaged communities problems to be addressed. So that's what I think. To answer you, Brad, I don't think any other country that I know of has a tool like this. I mean, there were even you can see a lot of these kind of tools. A lot of people develop these tools, but the way EPA is doing is great. Everything is transparent. Basically all the information that they used for creating this tool is available. I mean, you can download everything. You can recreate the tool by yourself. But they are doing all this updating, all the adding all the data. So that's really, really great service to the communities and profession too.
Fantastic, great answer. I think a lot of the work that the Obama administration in particular did in the first 4 years, really so much more data was available from federal agencies than we had seen before. One, to make available to the community and let them do additional things with it, rather than keeping it housed in its home agencies forever and ever, but also spurred a lot of innovation within those agencies themselves to come up with products like this down the road. So this was fantastic. run through of all that stuff and the topic in general. Brian, fantastic job interviewing and great questions today. And Krishna and Gaurav, you guys did a great job. We loved having you. For our viewers, if you liked what you saw and you're here at the end, so you probably did, again, click like, subscribe, and get notifications. And we, of course, will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. The GI Summer of Live is winding down. As hard as that may be to believe, it is getting to that time of year when the leaves are going to be changing and you can't go swimming anymore unless you live in a tropical area or you are insane. We have 3 live streams left for the summer. The next one is on September 5th. It is the 3rd and final Cross USA live streamed lecture of the summer by Kyle Rollins. It's on large scale testing of lightweight cellular concrete. You do not want to miss it. You can register for that and all of our upcoming live streams at our Eventbrite page. So Brian, Krishna, Gaurav, thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
I hope it was a
thank you
lot
very
of
much.
fun.
Yeah.
And our producer today was Matt Roberts. Thanks to everybody, and we will see you all on another Geo-Institute live stream very soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.